We constantly see a reflection of our inner self in our everyday life. Therefore, we can see our inner self in a physical way and learn from the experience and move on. Also, fear is the greatest block on evolution. Whatever area that we fear, that our fear relates to, is a no-go area for our evolution. Because people don't normally say, well, I fear that, I'm going to face it. They go, oh, no, thank you very much, change the subject, not going in there. So this process of drawing to us what we put out means that we have to face what we're putting out, so we can face it and evolve. So, when we fear something, we draw what we fear to us eventually. When we put out anger, we draw to us anger. When I was having my angry period, in the 1970s particularly, my life was a series of angry confrontations. I was working in the media and the BBC and all that stuff, and wherever I went, I was attracting angry people all the time. Even if I was in an apparently consciously calm state, my subconscious anger is still going out there and it's still pulling in angry people. Someone comes into a bar in that period and they'd had a bad day, they found me every time. And then I realized, and I started to ask a few questions, what's the common denominator of all these angry confrontations? Oh yes, it's you. So what goes on? What's causing them? Why? Started to realize, because I was angry, I was attracting anger. When I've observed my own life and the lives of others, it's very obvious that what they're putting out in their state of being is creating their physical life. And there's nothing more debilitating, more controlling and limiting than the victim mentality. We're encouraged by this manipulation throughout our lives to see ourselves as victims, to blame someone else. Oh, I'm a victim, I'm in this situation because of A, B, C, D, and on it goes. And when we're in that state, we're going to stay in that state, because when you think you're a victim, the victim vibe goes out, the victim circumstance goes in.
And the interesting thing is that we have been conditioned to feel the feelings of the things that we don't want in life and that we're afraid of. We wake up in the morning and we see the 6 o'clock news and all the things to be afraid of, and then we go through our day saying, oh, I hope I'm not going to see that today, or I hope it's not around the corner. And my question so fascinating me, where do we learn to feel the things that we don't want rather than things that we choose to have? And how would our lives be different if we could cut through all of the static and simply choose in our lives what we would like each moment of each day, or our relationships, or our abundance, or our careers, or the peace in our families to look like? What would our lives look like if we could do that? And there's very good scientific evidence showing precisely what our lives would look like, because we would very quickly experience everything that we've created. As a scientist, one of the first things I had to understand, and again, my training, I was trained in the hard sciences, and there was no allowance for any inner experience to have an effect on our outer world to begin with. So I began to understand, when we go into the other cultures, and I'm referring again and again to this wisdom, we had this wisdom in Western cultures, and it was lost in the 4th century. About 1,700 years ago, it was edited right out of our most cherished spiritual and religious traditions, the biblical edits of the 4th century. It was not edited from the other cultures that we've visited, and that's the value of going into these cultures. And they identify 3 separate yet related experiences that we all have in our bodies, and they literally call them thought, feeling, and emotion. And here's the difference. The thinking, they identify with the 3 upper energy centers of the body. The Sanskrit traditions have a 7 energy center, or 7 chakra system that they work with. And they say the upper 3 are related to what we call thought or logic processes. So when we think about something, we picture it in our mind, that perfect relationship or peace between nations. But we can only invite it into our lives when we breathe the power of emotion into that thought. The emotion comes from the lower 3 of those creative centers in our bodies. So when we breathe the power of emotion into our thought, we imbue that thought with life. And those 2 energies meet in the one center that is not accounted for yet in our model. It's in our heart, or what scientists call the 7-layer liquid crystal oscillator in the center of our chest. But we'll just call it our heart, because that's what it does. Our heart is creating electrical and magnetic waves that are influencing the world around us.
And so the more that they can lower the vibrational state of the planet, the more it becomes, if you like, treacle-like density. The more we living in that energy field are pulled into that state. When you have the wars and the environmental destruction and all these things that cause tremendous negative emotional energy, then you are lowering the vibrational state of the planet, you're lowering the vibrational state of the people, and you're basically holding them in a vibrational prison, which makes it much more difficult, not impossible, but much more difficult for them to hold connection out into the infinite beyond, where they can be in this world, but not of it in terms of their perspective of reality. If you disconnect people and hold them in this density, hold them in this illusory reality, they are in this world and they are also of it. And therefore, the only information that they have to get a fix on how they see life, themselves, and reality in general is through the eyes and the ears. And who controls that? The Illuminati control that through what we laughingly call the education system, the mainstream media across the planet. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to disconnect us from multidimensional infinity so that we don't see the world from that perspective, and therefore see through the illusion and see through the nonsense and see through the lies. And then once they've disconnected people, they then program this lower level of our consciousness with a reality that suits them. And this is why people who have had a different perspective on life, a different perspective on reality, who have held that connection to some extent out into the infinite, and have expressed that view, expressed that vision of reality and possibility here, they're the ones that are dubbed crazy, lunatics, and dangerous. Why? Not because they are, but because from the point of consciousness that they are perceiving this world, to people who are here, the vast majority, that is just crazy.
And one real big, energetic, magnetic attraction of reality is intent, I've found. Intent. An intent. This is what I am going to achieve. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I want to do. This is what I will do. When you say, hey, I'm not a victim, I'm in control of my life, I've created these circumstances I don't like, therefore I can create circumstances I do. At that point, the victim mentality is gone. Victim circumstances stop being attracted, and suddenly people come into your life who are just the people you need to get you out of the circumstances you don't like. And if you don't realize what's happening, and most of us don't at the time, we say, oh my God, mate, I was so lucky. This fella came into my life at just the right time. This person, I couldn't believe it. Amazing luck. No. You pulled them in because your state of being had changed, and you synced with what you needed to get out of that situation. We are so in control of our destiny, it's unbelievable. And yet billions are persuaded they're not, and therefore they create a very different reality. So if we're in fear, we can attract a reflection of fear. But when we emit love, we create a very different energy. Therefore, we create a very different reality.
And this is the great secret that was edited out of our Christian and pre-Christian Judeo-Christian traditions. When 45 books were removed in the 4th century, 20 were taken out completely. Another 25 were condensed and rearranged. And we know this because we found the information now in the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Nag Hammadi Library, the Coptic, the Gnostic texts. So we know what those texts would have said if we had had them.
Once you establish the reality we live in, and the nature of what the physical body is, it's a biological computer, and the nature of what we are, which is consciousness, and then you start, as I have, looking at the way this world is structured and how it works and why they do this and why they do that, it suddenly brings into crystal clarity why the world is structured as it is. Because, people look through their eyes and they think this is the world, but it isn't. It's a tiny, tiny frequency range within an infinite energy field of infinite frequency ranges. And basically, it's like a holographic television channel.
It is the act of consciousness that